So many reveals. Like Pennywise, we have been fed. Nom, 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 nom. And Marvel and DC streaming shows should take note. This is how you do a season finale. Let us revel in all the answers and new information we've gotten so we can hibernate between seasons. Don't make us wait hungry. Pennywise, by the way, skipping across the ice. Skipping! On his way to freedom, his eyes glowing through the storm, saying, "So long, losers!" was a brilliant visual in a sea of brilliant visuals. Talk about eye candy. But I think the biggest reveal is that this is not just a prequel, but a sequel. Oh my goodness. Turns out time isn't linear for Pennywise, and his death in 2016 is also his birth. And now he's going back in time through his feeding cycles to try and stop his death as best he can, because just like his timeline, Pennywise don't think too straight. But he knows there's a problem, and he knows who he has to kill to stop his death from happening. Because that's right, you guys were right. Marge becomes Margaret Tozier, Richie's mom, who's named after Rich. Wow. They kind of give it away earlier in this episode because she says, "I want to kill that effing clown," which of course her son says, like mother, like son. And of course the first movie. Now, Pennywise fails to kill Marge. And so afterwards, she confides to Lily that she's concerned that Pennywise will just keep going through the timeline, keep targeting her bloodline or other bloodlines of the 1989 Losers Club. And Lily says, "I guess that's someone else's fight, or another cast of characters fight." Yes, because this is chapter 1 of Welcome to Derry, as it's revealed, just like the movies. Instead of calling them seasons, they're going to call them chapters. I guess maybe, let's see. I'm filming this a couple of days before because I get screeners. I get screeners the beginning of the week. So they haven't announced a renewal yet. And the ratings, at least out of the gate, have only been okay. But I mean, I hope at least, Alien Earth got renewed, so anything can happen. Their ratings weren't phenomenal either. The show does trend, thankfully. But it seems like super expensive to make, especially with this episode. Oh boy, they spent the money. But yes, Pennywise, it turns out, is trapped in 2 cages, physically and then also within time. So the pillars are back in place. Another awesome visual, right? The starlight, I guess, from a fallen star. But then also in time with his death. So he only has 5 feeding periods to work from. I guess 1908 was his first feeding period after being trapped by the pillars. So there's 1908, 1935, 1962, 1989, and 2016, right? So can he go back in time and stop himself somehow from being killed and open up the back end so he no longer has he's no longer trapped with 2016 being the end of his cage, so to speak, right? So you've got 1908, 2016, and he can only move in between at the feeding periods, right? And as he tries to stop this from happening, as he tries to stop himself from being killed, it would seem that he is changing the timeline. Back to the Future style, because Mrs. Kersh runs into Beverly. That's right, Sophia frickin' Lillis. Oh my gosh, this is a cameo. They're so deliciously good. By the way, did you watch All Her Fault over on Peacock? Also featuring Sophia Lillis, and also very, very good. I highly recommend that now that you're done watching Welcome to Derry. But yes, what a freaking cameo. I mean, it's been a long time since the post-credit scene has been this awesome. But as I said, this begs the question, Beverly didn't recognize Mrs. Kersh in 2016 in the movie, and Mrs. Kersh wasn't institutionalized at Juniper Hill. So it seems like the timeline has changed, which would also explain why Richie's mother never prepared him for Pennywise, and why in the movies the Hanlons, it seems, are not the guardians of Derry, a role which they take on at the end of this first chapter. Because it would seem, as I said, that Welcome to Derry, Back to the Future style is creating an alternate timeline as Pennywise messes with it, which is messy. But Welcome to Derry was so well done with this first chapter that I'm willing to say, let's give it a try. Let's try it. So wow, Ingrid Kersh never leaves Juniper Hill. And years later, we see her still in her room with that same record, painting that pivotal moment where as Periwinkle, she grabbed Pennywise's arm, saying, "Don't leave me," which I think it's interesting they chose to represent that because I saw that moment resonate with a lot of people on social media. So I thought that was interesting that they knew that that would be something that really people latched onto. The Muschettis, by the way, are making an excellent case for their ability to handle complex family relationships, which of course would be Batman Brave and the Bold with Batman, aka Bruce Wayne, and his son Damian Wayne. I'm like, I think you guys could do it. So we hear a scream down the hall and we see that another patient has hung herself. I thought we were going to see a red balloon, just as Henry Bowers sees in the second movie or Ingrid did in the 1935 flashback sequence. But instead, we see this woman hanging there and her husband and daughter, I guess, were there visiting, and they're just in a shambles on the floor. And the daughter, her ember hair flowing, turns around and it's Beverly. You know, there's nothing in the Stephen King mythology that Beverly's mother was at Juniper Hill, but she did battle mental illness and she did kill herself. So this does fit with the storyline. And then Beverly has the same exchange with Mrs. Kersh about how no one in Derry ever truly dies, just at a different time and a different place. And that's the same thing, by the way, that Mrs. Kersh, of course, said to Lily. I wonder if Lily is Beverly's mother. In the original Stephen King story, Beverly's mother's name is Elfrida. Stephen King, you crazy SOB. But anyway, maybe that's Lily's middle name, right? I went back and looked at the tombstone. You know, they don't specify a middle name, so it could be Elfrida. But Beverly's mother, by the way, was a waitress, just like Lily's mother was. But I think there are a lot of parallels here that we just can't ignore. I think it must mean something that Mrs. Kersh would say the same thing to both of them. And of course, Lily has this horrible history with Juniper Hill, so it would make sense that she would meet her tragic end there. And I think it really works that Beverly would be her daughter. I think it works really quite nicely. Sometimes I myself have gotten frustrated with other franchises that have done prequels where everybody knows each other and there are all these things that you're like, what, y'all grew up together? That's ridiculous. But in a small town like Derry, I think it makes sense that there would be family lines. I think for some reason, I think it works. How do you feel about it? But if Welcome to Derry does get to continue, I think that while each season will be anchored by a different feeding period, we'll continue to jump around like we did this season to the other times. And wouldn't it be great if 1989 and 2016 came online and we could visit those or close to those timelines as well? And could we bring more of the actors back? Oh, and you could do them at like a little bit when they're a little bit older, maybe. And because, you know, the actors, of course, that was even a problem when they made the second movie, have gotten older. Sophia Lillis looks pretty much the same, though, even still. But maybe they could do something really interesting here. So anyone can come back because you can even bring back the dead, like Rich. One of the greatest moments ever. Like, I know that some of you are like, excuse me for getting excited about great television or streaming. But to me, this was instantly iconic. I was very worried that Pennywise would desecrate Rich's memory this episode. I was really worried about it, bringing him back in some gruesome way. But instead, when the ghost of the chief, first we heard the Native American music, and she returned and stepped back, and Richie was revealed in slow motion, looking so small and innocent. I lost it. I was just all the feels. It was so emotional. It was incredible. Incredible. And to see Rich run across the ice, again, great use of slow motion, right? His drumsticks. You know, at first I thought maybe it was the slingshot, but it was his drumsticks still in his back pocket. And to flip Pennywise the bird. Rich, still so spunky, so lovable, running to help his friends. And to be able to be the help that made the difference. Talk about a true knight. Wow. And then for him to be then at his own funeral later on, not only consoling his friends, but his own parents, was beautiful. And I was so happy that Dick could see it and was able to give those parents at least some comfort. Yes, Maturin might not have shown up, but Maturin did help Dick's powers to evolve. This episode, we get a glimpse as to why Dick wanted to lock these powers away in the first place. It's torture, especially now that the dead can see him, because he crossed the line by speaking to the dead last episode so that he could save at least some of the kids. But Dick is a knight too. He's a shining knight. He's a knight in shining armor. Shining. I like that. The shine, right? And agrees to go on long enough to help Leroy find his son, now that Pennywise has taken him. It's then that Rose, needing Dick's abilities to locate the missing dagger to replace the melted pillar, you guys were right on this as well, to rebuild the cage. So to quiet down these torturous dead voices, she gives him maturin root tea, which was, wow, really, I mean, again, I was like, how are we going to fix this? Take some drugs, which flips his powers or expands them from not just hell, but also to heaven. He still sees the dead, but the ones that are at peace, like Rich. He probably can still see the other ones too, I would think, because it makes his character more interesting, but he has more control and he can be more proactive. For instance, he can not only go back into Pennywise's mind, but trap Pennywise in an illusion. That was fantastic. Making this god, eater of worlds, feel like just a puny human, turning on the Bob Gray dial up to an 11. Effectively, at least for a little while, taking Pennywise offline and freeing all those kids. We're going to talk about that visual, don't worry. The change in the ringmaster's hand, by the way, to give Dick away was very clever and so subtle. I thought that was really interesting. And this upgrade to Dick's powers is just in time for him to get a new job at a hotel in London. What? So I looked it up, and in the Stephen King universe, Dick Hallorann actually floated around for a little bit, working in multiple places as a cook, at one point even in Key West, before he eventually gets to the Overlook Hotel. So is this a potential spinoff, right? I mean, maybe Dick said call him if you ever need him, so maybe they will in a future season or chapter. But I think Dick Hallorann could support a spinoff, because it would also in some ways be a shining spinoff, right? But I don't know if Welcome to Derry is doing big enough numbers to have a spinoff. But I sure would like to see Dick Hallorann with his powers expanded to see the good and the bad and to interact with them at a hotel. And a hotel is a great place for ghosts. Just ask the couple on the sitcom Ghosts, which not only was a hit in the UK, but spawned a very popular American version. There you go. There's the pitch. So let's talk Pennywise. And this is by far and away the most Pennywise action we've gotten to date. So much Pennywise. And the fact that they managed to keep it interesting and still bizarre and still so out of left field is a testament not only to Bill Skarsgård and the Muschettis, but also the whole team who worked on the show and the VFX department. I mean, not only is this demon clown an artiste, but so is the show itself and its portrayal of him. The assembly was amazing, using that principal as a puppet. Oh my gosh. But my favorite part was how he activated the intercom. That was great. Then the floating kids trailing his circus wagon, Pied Piper style in the storm. It reminded me of Game of Thrones with all the stuff with the Night King. That's why I said this was Game of Thrones level. It was just so cool. His light up eyes in the storm. They got so much use out of that. They used it multiple times with the clown silhouette around them. Magical. And as I said, wait till you hear this. Skipping instead of running. Because it was not only his personality, but it showed how confident he was that he had already won. He didn't need to rush. And I guess Pennywise has never read the story of the tortoise and the hare. Or in this case, the tortoise and the clown. That is absolutely brilliant because it's the exact same thing that happened. He was so sure and took his time and they got him. It was close though. It was very close. Just when you think Pennywise is going to go full spider, like he does, of course, in chapter 2, he goes half bat, half vulture. That was amazing. It scared the crap out of the adults who were blasting him with gunfire to try and slow him down. And they thought the kids were done for. That reaction was amazing. And it was, again, as I said, so close. But with Rich's help and this so many great shots. There's a great shot. There's a great shot. There's a great shot. But they get that shard of star into the tree. And it activates all the starlight, blowing Pennywise away and trapping him once again. And the shapeshifter does a Mystique, right? Filtering through some of his forms. Not lizard scales like Mystique did in X2, which was really cool. But here, almost like circus performer makeup. That was a great choice. And again, the VFX on this season have been a little wonky in spots. I totally agree. But I guess they were saving it all for this finale. And it was amazing. All right, but so Pennywise isn't dead. He's just caged again and back to sleep. And that's where the Hanlons, it turns out, are going to come in. Charlotte, in the understatement of the year, has not enjoyed her time in Derry. And last week, I said, what on earth could make this woman stay here? And during this episode, at one point, I thought Leroy wasn't going to make it. And Charlotte would stay to be near his spirit and maybe remarry, right? I mean, you don't know it's necessarily Leroy, who's Mike's grandfather, right? And then when Charlotte had to rescue Leroy, I thought maybe she wasn't going to make it. And it wouldn't be an issue whether or not she stayed in Derry because it would be moot. Instead, they both survive. And Rose, Taniel, doesn't make it. So Rose doesn't want to continue protecting, being a protector of Derry or running her sheep farm, right? So she asks the Hanlons if they maybe want to step up and take over for her because she says more people, hopefully if there's more welcome to Derry, will come searching for Pennywise's power, from the military to who knows who else. Charlotte is an activist. She's a fighter. She fights the good fight. And this is a chance for her and Leroy, who's been honorably discharged in exchange for not saying anything about what happened, for them to fight the same battle together. And I really like that for them. So often, of course, when we were watching this season, we were like, if only they would work together. They're both fantastic. I think this is great. It's great. I had a little bit of an issue with how things went down. I think Charlotte made some bad choices putting all those people in danger without them, agreeing to it. But I think this is really great. And I would hope to see what happens with Leroy and Charlotte going forward. But again, there's nothing in any of the movies that points to them being the protectors of frickin' Derry. They would have brought it up, I think. So again, I think the timeline has changed. And now maybe Will won't die. He's got a lot to live for. He has that great kiss with Ronnie, which of course very much mirrors the kiss between Bill and Beverly in the movies. Will says he's going to write to Ronnie as the Grogans flee to Canada all together. I thought that was great. I'm glad they were able to stay together and help her not to forget about Derry or him. I thought that was wonderful. Now, finally, I didn't forget about General Shaw, and neither did Pennywise. So with Pennywise uncaged at the start of the episode, a mist descends on Derry. An awesome shout out to, of course, another famous Stephen King story. And this one envelops Derry, sending everyone running for cover as the leaves die on the trees. Just like in the book, everybody runs for cover. It comes up on the military's radar. They're like, General Shaw is like, that's great. This is what I wanted. But then they're like, sir, Dick Hallorann and Leroy Hanlon have escaped the base. Because, to stop Pennywise. And General Shaw at first thinks it's just Dick Hallorann and is like, he already helped us. But when he finds out the man with no fear is with Dick Hallorann, well, then maybe they might succeed. Although I have to say, they never really did anything with Leroy not being able to be afraid, right? Except that he could be very much afraid when it came to his family, as Pennywise figures out when he calls Leroy back. That was fabulous. Leroy tried to get his son on the line, worried about where he was, and then he hangs up because he couldn't get him. And then it rings. And again, it's Pennywise on the other end of the line being like, oh, I know you're not afraid of me, but I have your son. And you're like, oh my God. So that was good. So on the ice, working to free Pennywise, they open fire on our heroes. Oh my goodness. General Shaw sees Pennywise out there, frozen in Dick's mind trap. So he's like, let me go take a closer look. He is the villain of this story. He's got to do something stupid. So he walks on over to see if this thing was indeed real or just a little boy's nightmare. And it turns out, General Shaw says, he's both. Amazing line. However, just at that moment, Pennywise manages to break free from Dick's trap and is looking right at General Shaw. Now, at first, he just thinks this is another helper, another crazy person helping him out, just like Mrs. Kersh. And he starts to walk away. But then he remembers General Shaw's smell back from 1908 when he was a delectable little snack. And Pennywise never likes to let a snack go. this felt so much to me like an Indiana Jones meeting between a villain and a soldier. Although, of course, in those movies, it was the Nazis. And here it's a U.S. military person. And I think that was a very intentional choice on the part of this show. That's very interesting. Discuss amongst yourselves down below. I thought the finale had the finale in particular felt very Spielbergian to me at points, which was very effective. Although I thought it was interesting, they said for the 1935 flashback sequence a couple episodes ago with Mrs. Kersh at Juniper Hill, they'd intentionally mimicked the filmmaking of that time period of the 1930s, which I think, when you think about it, really was very effective. So I do wonder what future seasons or chapters, again, would look like from a stylized perspective. So what did you think of the season finale of Welcome to Derry? Or do you think it should be a series finale? Was this enough? Or do you want to keep going? And with this idea that this is both a prequel and a sequel, do you want to see them unravel the original story and maybe have an alternate, they wouldn't do away with that, but an alternative? And do you want to see more of the OG losers come back? Like not just Sophia Lillis, but what if we could bring back, for instance, Bill Hader? Oh, that would be so interesting. That would be really cool. James McAvoy, he's kind of, I think everybody in these movies is still available. I think this could be really, really cool. So, and you could do it at different points, right? It doesn't always have to be necessarily at a feeding period if the timeline has changed. Because now these characters, especially if they're staying in Derry, they remember, like, what are the Hanlons up to? Who maybe comes for Pennywise? And what if they do stop them from killing Pennywise in 2016? Then the feeding cycle would continue for perhaps many more chapters to come. What do you think? Again, share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today because there's more movies and TV coming in 2026, baby. Share those thoughts down below. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.